It's my pleasure that Ömer Kaliskan agreed to give his paper on internationalization of higher education, science mapping the knowledge base from 1929 to 2022. This presentation is being made by him from Germany with a 9-hour time difference. So we are grateful for him first to accepting the invitation, but also to be staying up to give it, which is a rather unusual time for making a presentation. His bibliography was, of course, on the invitation, but very briefly, he's a senior researcher and former Alexander von Humboldt Fellow at the International Center for Higher Education Research, INCHER, at the University of Kassel in Germany. He is currently the principal investigator of a European Union-funded Horizon project involving 11 partner countries and 13 universities. My goodness. His research focuses on the internationalization of higher education, international student mobility, and educational leadership. His work has been published in leading journals, including Educational Management, Administration, and Leadership, Journal of Educational Administration, International Journal of Education and Development, Journal of Studies in International Education, and Comparative Education. I would like to also add that the representation here in no way reflects the significance of the topic, because it's hotly discussed right now all over Europe and certainly here in the United States, where we're dealing with what we could call politely an anti-international movement. However, I think there's a lot of consequence from having all of this literature mapped as Ömer has done it. And I'm very grateful that he was making this presentation. So now the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. Then we can start. Hello, everyone. Today I will talk about our recent publication with co-author Yusuf Iqbal Oldaç. The title is Internationalization of Higher Education, Science Mapping the Knowledge Base from 1929 to 2022. First of all, I want to talk about what does internationalization mean. Normally, the term as a concept has been used in political science, international relations for years, but the popularity of the term in education or in higher education has become more apparent after 1980s. I mean, it's quite recent compared to other field of studies like political science. And the well-known definition of the term, as you know, Knight's famous definition, the process of integrating an international, intercultural, and global dimension into the purpose, functions, and the delivery of education in what means in teaching area, research area, and service. In a way, the incorporation of international elements to the higher education area. And what kind of things we have seen while we are talking about internationalization? I mean, student and staff mobility, reciprocal influences in higher education. I mean, internationalization of education and research, cooperation, competition, knowledge transfer, and policies on this area. Actually, what is striking here that we should mention, the research area has evolved a lot since early discussions and definitions. For example, what was formerly considered as a marginal activity, I mean, the influence or as the topic of discussion, it was not very apparent in the early times. But in time, it has now emerged as a driving force, as a key reform agenda in higher education reforms or discussions. What does this mean for us? It is changing, and the importance of the field has become much more apparent. And this means discussions and policy practices around internationalization are constantly evolving. It has a quite dynamic area, and therefore we have seen new topics associated with this broad term. For example, virtual internationalization, especially after COVID-19, we have discussed such a topic because thanks to remote tools like this Zoom facility, we have talked about we may do this job in a virtual way. This was coined as a virtual internationalization or forced internationalization, for example, especially for the students, refugee students or displaced students, for example. These group of students are not traditional mobile students coming from one country to another country. They are forced to leave, and they have a big quantity now as a higher education students. Or regional internationalization, for example. Traditional, we talk about North America and North Europe as a destination point for higher education or research topics. But in the last 2 decades, for example, like the economic activity, we have seen regional hubs like in the East Asia, China, Hong Kong, those area, or in the Middle East, in Arabic Gulf area, or in Europe. I mean, there are multiple areas of, I mean, countries, and they have their own internationalization hubs, a little bit different from the traditional ones. And thinking about this, we want to scan or review this area, what's going on so far, what we have discussed, and for the future, what can we say, I mean, for this area, because the interest is increasing for this area. Actually, in the literature, there are some reviews, actually 3 or 4 reviews, but their scope is not quite broad compared to ours. And we intend to make a review almost 100 years of research. And in our research, we used a novel technique. This is bibliometric analysis or science mapping technique. In the following slides, I will talk about this. And also, we covered a big database compared to other reviews. Therefore, in this review, we try to cover almost all possible publications in this area. Of course, it has limitations. We couldn't cover all the things. In the method section, I will talk about this. And as part of this study, what we discussed, we have 4 research questions. First of all, what are the volume, growth trajectory, and geographic distribution of publications in this field? I mean, in terms of number of studies, and the studies coming from different regions, countries, and their growth by years, and we try to demonstrate those change by year, by country, and by number of studies in a descriptive sense. And our second research question, what documents in the field have evidenced the greatest impact on scholarly discourse? I mean, there are several studies, but some studies are quite influential. I mean, having taken a number of citations and in a way shape the field. And we will share those influential documents in the field. And as a third research question, what is the intellectual structure of the knowledge base in this research area? By intellectual structure, what we mean? I mean the authors and the journals. I mean, what do the journals and authors say about the patterns of those structure? And how we are doing this? Through co-citation analysis. In the following slides, I will talk about this. But basically, in intellectual structure, we want to demonstrate some important authors and some important journals having publication in this research area. And the last research question, what is the conceptual structure of the internationalization of higher education knowledge base? By conceptual structure, we want to demonstrate thematic research clusters of the field. I mean, we just focused on keywords from abstracts, titles, and the given keywords. And we worked on those keywords and how those keywords inform us what's going on in the field. Of course, we followed kind of a co-occurrence analysis of keywords or co-word analysis. In the following slides, I will talk about that. And in relation to methods we followed in this study, we used science mapping approach. Science mapping method, a novel method used to examine the connections between the disciplines, fields, subjects, individual papers through visualization techniques. In a way, in science mapping, we are scanning the scientific landscape to explore the connections between those disciplines, fields, subjects. I mean, it doesn't give us an in-depth information because it's impossible in a way because we are dealing with a large set of data. But from those data, and we want to reflect a picture, a meaningful picture, what's going on, what kind of a connection between authors, keywords, fields, countries, and it gives us an idea what's going on in this particular field of study. Because, for example, we are trying to cover 100 years of studies, and the number of publications are more than 5,000. Therefore, in a way, this is not kind of an in-depth method, but kind of a more scanning the scientific landscape. In relation to the analysis, we followed bibliometric analysis. What is bibliometric analysis? In bibliometric analysis, we use quantitative methods for the systematic exploration of the scientific publications. And to make this analysis, we used a software. The name of the software is Weaver. It was developed by authors. Here you can see Van Eck and Waldman from Leiden University, Netherlands. It's a package program. I mean, it's a free, you can download, and it's easy to use. Even you can learn how to use it by watching some videos provided by the authors. But if you are interested more, you can even join their kind of training course and learn it. And for our particular study, we use Scopus database for keyword searching. I mean, we try to reach the relevant documents through keyword searching methods from the Scopus database. Here you can see the Prisma preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Typical steps, what we have done. As I have said before, we prefer to use Scopus database. Normally, there is Web of Science, but Scopus is more broad compared to Web of Science. But of course, it doesn't mean that Scopus includes all of the publications, but I mean, it's a manageable database, and in the literature, and the authors recommend using as a uh, preferable database. I mean, WOS maybe can be an option, but it's not quite broad as Scopus. And we didn't put any year limit at first search. We want to see what we have in this area. And when we checked, we have seen the first publication is going back to 1911. 1911. It's interesting. But of course, later we want to check those early years, because in keyword search, you should be careful not to include irrelevant documents. Maybe some other fields are using same set of keywords. They are not totally related with higher education area. Therefore, we excluded some documents. And overall, at first, we reached more than 12,800 documents, and we have some inclusion and exclusion criteria. We only included articles and reviews and publications only in English. But of course, I have to mention here, if the publication has title, abstract, and keyword in English, that's okay, we include it. But if it hasn't, we couldn't, because this software, PostViewer, is scanning the abstracts, titles, and the given keywords to find the relevant keywords we enter to the search button. Therefore, those title, abstract, and keyword section should be in English at least, if it is not even the publication itself in another language. But after these inclusion and exclusion steps, we reach 5,253 documents. But here I have to say we followed manual check for each article, because I mean, this is a big set of data, and the Scopus is a database, and we are using kind of a machine technique, and we checked whether the document is really relevant for our study. Therefore, it took our time so much, and we want to be sure really that's really related with our focus. And results here, the publications by year, you can see it's starting from 1929. You can reach this publication if you search. This is Summer Study Abroad. It was published in the Modern Language Journal. And as you can see, the historical growth is very low until 1980s, maybe even 1990s, and no significant growth until the 2000s. And here we can see a rapid increase, especially after 2010s. And currently, as for date of this publication, in a year, we have seen almost 700 publications. And here you can see the change. For example, you can see a big jump from maybe we interpreted this jump, maybe it may be related with the COVID-19 time, or sometimes the databases are changing their coverage. Maybe they are including some other journals. I mean, they are extending their coverage. Because of that, those numbers may increase, but it's the current reflection of the publications by year. And publications by journals, these are the first 20 journals. We didn't include all the journals. Normally, in our data set, almost more than 1,400 journals. But maybe in time, some journals are not publishing, their names changed. But the first 20 journals are, you can see here. And when we look at the research areas, higher education, international education, language education, educational management, and business education, there are different areas or topics as part of internationalization of higher education. And here you can see Journal of Studies in International Education has the greatest number of publications by year. Normal higher education is older than this journal, but every year it has many more publications and it's increasing. So, and when it comes to the publications by country, here you see 15 countries. First 15 countries. Actually, there are other countries, but we especially selected these ones. But here, what is important? These selected countries make almost 93 of all the publications. I mean, they are covering almost all of the publications. I mean, the remaining countries makes only 7% of the publications. And 1/3 of the documents are coming from the United States. You can see here it has more than 1,500 documents. What is interesting in our finding, China is a non-English speaking country in the first three. Maybe when you check the other areas, you may see similar results, but it's interesting because English speaking countries, as you know, traditionally has an advantage in publications, and it's a traditional destinations, but in this picture we have seen that China in the third place, and East Asia with 5 countries. This is interesting. It confirms our regional hub idea because as a region, they are in this 15 countries. And European Union with 5 countries, including United Kingdom and Russia. And in a way, we can see 3 different parts in the world. Only the number of publications, maybe. And this is co-authorship map of countries. Here you see, and this visualization actually generated by that Boss Weaver. And here you see the country names, and they are connecting to each other, and some circles, and the size of circles are different. What does this mean? Here you can see 5 clusters or 5 colors of countries. For example, in the center, you can see United States, United Kingdom. They are main connectors in terms of co-authorship for the map. They are in the center. But also, we can see other countries. For example, in green cluster, Australia is the biggest contributor in terms of co-authorship. It's connecting with the countries, nearby countries. For example, Malaysia, Thailand, South Korea. Maybe you may see some very geographically distant country, but we can see here Australia and nearby countries, China, other countries, for example, New Zealand, Singapore, Taiwan. This is another cluster of countries. I mean, the authors from those countries studying together. They are making a kind of a group. And in the yellow section, for example, Canada, Spain, Portugal, Chile, maybe Latin American countries, Spain, Canada. In the red cluster, for example, it's obvious that this is like the European Union or Europe. And from Africa, for example, South Africa and Ghana, as a representative country from that region, with two countries. But here I should mention, normally there are lots of countries, of course, when we think of 5,000 publications, but we need to put a threshold. For example, as a threshold, we decided at least 3 articles. I mean, if that country has 3 articles, it will be included to this analysis. And as a result of this threshold, we were able to only include 88 countries. Maybe you may not count 88 countries on this map because some are not appearing there because their size of circles are very small. But when you zoom in the WOS viewer, you may see, but now you cannot see because here the size of circle is important. If your number of publications or co-authorship are big, you are becoming in the center with the biggest circle, as you can see for United States, United Kingdom, or some regional countries. And for this publication pattern, for example, we can say that geography is important, culture, language, and colonial ties. I mean, this is confirming these interpretations because when we look at the map, the countries in that way shaping this picture. And influential publications, and here again we just selected first 15 authors according to their number of citations, but here we just only use Scopus citation. For example, in Google Scholar or Web of Science citation, maybe the numbers could be different, but we only used Scopus citation. The highest impact document is Alpbach, Philip Alpbach, and Jane Knight's conceptual paper, in which multiple sides of internationalization and the motivations behind internationalization of higher education efforts are discussed. And when we review the articles in the table, most of them are related to international students, their experiences. In addition, language learning and studying abroad are another research area. And what is interesting here, there are 2 studies on rankings published relatively recently, but they are taking, for example, a number of citations, Marginson and Van der Wande and Waldman et al. And this, which indicates maybe these topics are hot topics and they will take attention in the future. And this is co-citation map of the most cited researchers, actual journals. Here you can see different colors, and we have 4 main clusters of journals, and their colors also are different. Why? Because their scope, I mean, their publication scope is different. For example, in blue cluster, for example, we can see foreign language learning, study abroad kind of related with language learning issues are covered. And so we have seen those types of journals. For example, in red cluster, and the journals publishing about medical studies, nursing education, kind of business. And here you can see with the biggest circle, Journal of Studies in International Education on the center of the this map. And on the yellow cluster, we can see globalization, geography, and intercultural issues. And the green cluster, higher education journals. From this map, also the distance between those clusters also have a meaning, for example. For example, the red cluster, in a way, connecting with other clusters. For example, with blue, yellow, or green cluster. What does this mean? I mean, in a way, they are publishing to some extent similar topics. But when it comes to the yellow and blue, maybe their distance, or green or blue, their distance is a little bit far away compared to other ones. This means their topic, their scope is a little bit different. And here, co-citation map of the most cited researchers. Actually, what we are doing here, we want to perform a co-citation analysis of the authors to identify the knowledge base of the research area and its intellectual structure. How can we are doing? For example, from those selected 5,000 publications and from their reference section, which authors cited together. I mean, you are checking, for example, one single document, the reference section, and you are trying to understand which authors cited together in those documents. If they are cited together, this means as a research interest, and those authors are close to each other in terms of research area. And by this logic, this map is generated by this software. For example, here we see 5 clusters of scholars. For example, on the center with the red one, you can see the composition of influential authors, Marginson. For example, here you can see and other researchers. And nearby, for example, purple, other researchers. They are studying, for example, internationalization policy, transnational campuses. You may not see those keywords, but by checking their study areas, we want to write here to make this map meaningful for you. For example, for the green cluster, you can see the authors studying second language learning, foreign language learning, or English as a medium of instruction is also a kind of a topic discussed in this area. And in blue cluster, for example, the authors studying intercultural issues, and the yellow cluster, mobility and migration. So those authors are studying these topics. And again, here, the proximity of circles and the links connecting authors refer to intellectual relationships among the researchers. If they are so much far away, that means those authors are not cited together in a given document. And again, here we have to use some threshold. Here you can see, but in the bottom section, for example, here we looked for the authors having at least 30 citations. If the authors are taking less than that, we didn't include to the analysis, because when you include all of the authors, I mean, you cannot see the map, because there would be lots of circles and it would be impossible to see each of them. Therefore, you have to decide on a threshold to choose the most relevant or the most cited ones. And this is the conceptual structure of the field. Here, it's maybe when you first look at the map, it may seem a little bit meaningless, but those colors and with the circles, later we draw that to make them more distinctive. And in this part of the study, we explored the thematic research clusters of the field by conducting co-occurrence analysis of keywords. I mean, in a way, keyword analysis. I mean, we, through the software, of course, by checking the title, abstract, and the given keywords, what kind of keywords are mentioned in a given study. And by this way, the co-occurrence technique worked. And this analysis helped us to uncover the conceptual patterns in the literature by reviewing those co-occurrence of the keywords. And we have 7 clusters. For example, if you start with the green cluster, for example, the green cluster reflects the body of research on study abroad, the associated subtopics like short-term study visits abroad, experiential learning, and transformative learning. And next to the green cluster, the red cluster mainly represents language policy in internationalization and related topics like second language learning, English medium of instruction, intercultural communication, and identity. When you zoom in, maybe you may see many other topics. But as I have said before, here the size of circles are important. When the importance of that becomes more apparent and the size becomes bigger according to the number of co-occurrence of the selected keywords. And the purple cluster reflects international students, their experiences. For example, here you can see health-related problems, as well, for example, COVID-19, depression. Here you can see COVID-19, for example. I mean, at those period of time, people published such issues and as part of this area of study, and we can see here. And stress, mental health of students. This is an area of research we are discussing. And the yellow cluster, it's overlapping with the nearby purple cluster, of course. And the themes are related to international mobility, migration, and migration of international students, brain drain, social capital, cosmopolitanism, and cultural capital, and different issues. I mean, even you may make some conclusions between those connections. For example, when we think of brain drain, student migration, these are related topics. We may write maybe page of something, but the scope of this study is just scanning the literature and giving some information. Therefore, we just want to share this part and just mentioned those things very shortly. And the orange cluster, for example, here you can see, represents the research area in terms of teaching and learning practices, And under this cluster, some of the frequently used keywords are internationalization of teaching, curriculum, and international exchange programs, you can see. And the last, the light blue cluster, for example, in the center, it's not very apparent like the other ones, is a small but visible one in the conceptual structure. The main topical element of the cluster is transnational education. What is interesting for here, I have to share. Normally, in the publications, there were several problems with the keywords. We have to work on this problem. For example, when it comes to the internationalization keyword, it's written in American English with different alphabet, but in British English with a different way. So we have to merge those differences by using some technique. And this was kind of an initial kind of refining section before the main analysis. I mean, I want to say that it was not easy for us to combine those relevant keywords. Sometimes people were using similar things with different names. We have to combine those things as well. I mean, because in their publications, they are randomly using very different things, but their correspondence is this maybe same thing, but very different usage. And therefore, at the initial step, it was not easy for us to get a refined set of data. But it was expected because in bibliometric research, such things are expected things. I want to share for your reference if you want to do such a study. And this is the last slide for findings section. Here you can see temporal overlay of keywords in the area. Through this, we want to go beyond mapping the conceptual structure in the area and investigate the overlay of the temporal visualization of keyword clusters. I mean, by years, what's going on? For example, here you can see the years between 2015 to the end 2019 and different colors. Those yellow colors mean these are the recent topics discussed as part of internationalization. For example, you can see here COVID-19 or English medium of instruction, EMI, or international student mobility, for example. But in the very center, you can see the study abroad, of course. Of course, this is similar to this one. It's not very different. But here we are just mentioning the change of the topics by years, maybe the research interest, what kind of topics are studying people in the recent years. You can understand what kind of things are changing and in the recent years people are studying. And the discussion and the conclusion, let me conclude. And the area is quite dynamic and vibrant and evolving from a marginal activity to a highly prominent area of research. And it's obvious that you can see there are several subfields of research and study abroad, language learning, transnational education. And there are some core disciplines, but there are other disciplines as well we can associate with the area. And the real growth is coming on after 2000s, and the main contributions are coming from United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. And we can see the contribution of China recently. And also we have to mention the underrepresentation of global south perspectives, and it's maybe coming with China, but when it comes, when we exclude the China, the dominance of the Western academic contribution is quite apparent. And English language and Western dominance in publications are apparent. And maybe for more inclusive, diverse, and equitable collaboration may be an option for more, diverse publication patterns and critical reflection on power dynamics. We may discuss why we have such a picture on the research area. And also I have to mention that this bibliometric analysis is not an in-depth analysis like systematic reviews. For example, you are choosing 50 or 20 publications, you are reading the text, and you are making some inferences, making some categorization from every single set of publications, but we are dealing with thousands of publications, so this is not an in-depth analysis. Maybe it may be beneficial for us to feed the next steps of systematic reviews or for future single separate studies. Therefore, bibliometric studies are just scanning the landscape, and it informs us what's going on in the research area. And if you are interested, here you can see the publication. It was published 3 months ago in January 2025. You can read the details from there. And thank you very much for your attention. That's all. If you have any questions, I will be happy to respond as much as possible.
Are there questions, Omar?
In the chat section, okay. Okay. Let me
Well,
check.
if I might start us off with a question about the subsequent studies, because it strikes me that with such a large number of sources, that it would take an awful lot of time, even if you tried to isolate a specific area within internationalization, to actually read and extract and analyze multiple sources of this kind. So you mentioned the possibility of doing something like that. What are your actual plans?
Actually, this, regional perspectives, it seems important. Because, for example, recently, for example, we are studying internationalization issue quite dominantly from the Western perspective, for example, because these are the leading contributors. But in regional areas, there are something different going on, developing, and we are not aware of that area. For example, here the first signals are coming from China. For example, here we are saying East Asia with 5 countries are 1/3 of this list. What does this mean for us? And in this region, there are something people are doing in a collaboration pattern. For example, they are studying, and we have to look at that, what will happen. Maybe they are studying similar topics, but they are also studying some local issues. And for example, the destination countries in terms of international mobility, it's obvious that we can feel that it's changing. I mean, the nearby or the regional hubs are attracting students, for example. This is also another topic, and from this one, we may feel that, for example, some overseas or branch universities are being opened in Gulf region and Arabic states, or in China, for example. Now it's quite interesting that although it's not an English-speaking country, is producing English publications. It's quite interesting, and for the future, we will discuss such things. For example, last year, it was quite interesting for me to hear some colleagues from China were offering the Chinese definition of internationalization. They were criticizing the well-known definition. Maybe it was a little bit strange for me to hear. But later, while they are discussing the internationalization from a little bit from more Eastern perspective, maybe Eastern cultural perspective. It's quite interesting. I don't know what will happen, but we will see. I mean,
Oh, I noticed that Dutch universities, which have turned themselves inside out over the last 15 years to offer English language programs
yeah,
for the bachelor's degree, are finally retreating from that.
yeah,
And I mean, there are a number of reasons. There isn't enough housing for the international students, particularly in Amsterdam, but also in Utrecht and of all places, Nijmegen. And there's a very heated discussion, shall we say, about the role of Dutch for Dutch students in a
yeah,
university course. And I followed this with great interest because I think, and this is a whole other theme, which derives from some of this, is the impoverishment of national cultures if too much foreign language teaching is occurring
yeah,
at universities. I mean, that's not a question that's asked all that much, but it started to be quite evident in Dutch universities that Dutch students could not write good essays in Dutch anymore.
yeah,
So that's a whole other thing,
yeah.
apart from my particular interest, but I mean, it must have consequences. Yadi here is from China, and she is here studying. We don't have honors programs per se, but we have honors selection for majors across the board who are for our students who are doing particularly well, who get special honors training. But again, the issue arises about the concept of what is honors program in China versus what an honors program is anywhere else. Because that raises actually what you were referring to earlier, semantic difficulties about cross-cultural comparison.
Yeah, yeah, yes, totally.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned rankings.
Rankings, yeah, here, I mean, yes. For example, in this one, there are two studies about rankings published relatively recently, but it has taken important citation. For example, here, 15.
Well, I can't read that because that's too fine on
Yeah, the
our,
Leiden ranking. I mean,
but in your paper where
yeah,
you have,
okay.
um,
Normally, when we look at the year of publication,
right.
it's quite, I mean, young, but it
Yeah,
has taken important citation.
but that's the point, it
Yeah,
seems, in China
yeah,
about publishing in English
yeah.
so that their institutions can move up in the international rankings. I mean, that's something of a,
And here in the fifth place, to rank or to be ranked, this is in the fifth
Marginson
place, Margensen
funded
and
article.
yeah.
Yeah,
For
I
example,
mean,
Ines, yeah, please.
well, it's just, although I think that international exchanges, joint publications, all of the things that you cover with your uh, summing up of this literature are all tremendously important. I also think it leads to some distortions within countries. A recent statistic I encountered, I can't unfortunately remember exactly where, but 92% of PhDs earned in the United States in electrical engineering are obtained by people not born in the United States.
Wow.
92%. Well, that's actually totally insane. And the distortion has come in that the United States has not poured the resources into training its own population to be able to study electrical engineering at the doctoral level or even to have an interest in it.
Yeah,
So the consequences of internationalization are numerous. And of course, American educated Chinese have been going back to China and raising their whole level of scientific research and productivity.
yeah,
And that's great. I mean, what's not to love about that? But the issue is on the training side, what that has done to that particular national culture.
yeah, yeah. In a way, it's disregarded, ignored. I don't know what to say, how to say, but uh, it's interesting. I mean, the local people are not maybe motivated or encouraged.
Well, so long as people from China and India and Korea and Turkey and Iran are populating our doctoral programs in STEM, up until now, that has been okay because it kept the research going, the numbers needed to conduct the research, and kept the whole apparatus in motion.
But I'm not sure for the next years what will happen for the university degree because in the last 2 decades, the number of universities, I mean, has increased a lot. But I am skeptical to what extent the job market will
Well, there you
respond to
go.
this increase.
Yeah.
Therefore, a kind of, even in Turkey now, I mean, the number of universities tripled in the last 20 years. But now, I mean, the politicians or people are discussing closing some sections because there are no entry from the population because they see, I mean, there is no kind of a uh, gain at the end of the university degree. I mean, this is also another issue for the whole world because the university cannot generate, I mean, maybe not university, but the job market cannot
Mhm.
generate enough jobs for those
Exactly.
high skilled people, maybe.
Right.
But for Germany, I mean, they are following very traditional way, but uh, now they seem okay because they haven't so much pushed university degree. I mean, a kind of friendship, vocational education is so much encouraged, and therefore I don't see kind of a pressure on university here. Maybe this is a little bit the salary level between, it's not very different. I mean, it's not a wide range of salary uh, amounts for the working people. They are so close to each other, but I mean, we have to think about this as well. I mean, mm, until when, until what point those inflation in higher education degree will go on, like the money, it's not a kind of a money.
Right, right. Well, I can't see who all is on here, but,
I think we should address Jennifer's question here.
yes. I note the abandonment of globalization recently. Any prediction about which buzzword might appear next?
Globalization after. Yeah.
Just to clarify, this is when you were talking about the prevalence of certain keywords over time, and the shift, and globalization had been very prominent. I think it was 2015. And it was at the darkest end of the color spectrum. And then of course the COVID came up, and then we moved on to other things. Just sort of in that trajectory of moving forward, we don't really talk about globalization that much anymore in broader discourses, let alone in higher education. Any idea, banning another pandemic, what else might what might emerge as foci of these research papers?
I mean, you want to ask that what is our conclusion or prediction?
Yeah, it is a prediction. It
Okay,
wasn't the slide that you have up now. I
Okay.
think it was the next slide,
Okay.
perhaps.
The next slide. Okay, here.
Yes. Yes. So see the purple of globalization. Looking at your color chart, that seemed most prevalent in 2015. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
the
doesn't
yellow,
continue.
the,
The yellow is as I
yeah,
understand,
most
the yellow
current,
is
yeah.
most current. The purple is oldest, if you
Yeah,
will.
yes, you're right.
So moving away, so we don't really talk about globalization that much anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
We've moved
Yeah,
into international student mobility, English as a lingua franca, English as a medium of instruction.
yes.
Any idea where we're going next? A prediction of what the focus will be in research going forward?
For example, when we checked depression, mental health, COVID-19, agency, English medium of instruction is maybe the opening of universities in China, maybe in those regions. I mean, it's quite hot topic. Borders, immigration.
Anything about economics or inequality?
East Asia. I mean, here, transnational. Actually, this picture may something, but does not tell all the thing, I think, because it's we may see something because what people published so far. And here, what is important, maybe what we are talking about are related with maybe small number of people. For example, there was an inflation about studies related with COVID-19. For example, here we see mental health, depression. But from my own observation, as a hot topic, for example, as part of those decolonialization, for example, some regional issues, I mean, different perspectives or different things people are discussing. For example, in my latest study, it will be published in Comparative Education. For example, we discussed how Turkey's internationalization is being shaped
Mm.
on a regional base. I mean, this is completely different from the Western way. Why I am saying? Because there are some cultural, linguistic, and soft power elements. For example, I mean, the biggest tool for the Western countries, for example, the language, the English.
Yeah.
And the science is being produced there. But in regional base, sometimes for people, some regions are not very accessible to reach those places, and they are preferring nearby regions, maybe because of financial issues, because of visa regimes. They prefer nearby countries, and it's also making a kind of regional areas like the economic activity. For example, in political science, for example, we were discussing West and East in Cold War times, but now we are beginning to discuss different clusters in the world.
Mm.
And this probably would happen for education as well. I mean,
Yep.
this is my observation. I mean, we may not find all the things in this particular study because it's only the not manipulation, but the keywords. We are just looking at the keywords and their generation through a software. It may not give us all the answers, but
Or how they discuss those
yeah,
keywords. You can have a very colonial versus a very critical perspective on the same topic that only manifests as one keyword,
yeah,
but very different takes on it. No,
yeah.
interesting point. Thank you. Yeah, well, it's nice to see the student well-being represented with the mental health and the like. It's encouraging. Thank you.
Yeah, you are welcome. Thank you very much. And it's quite quantitative, you know, but when we discuss about those topics, maybe it's a little bit qualitative. I mean, we have to get into the deep structure and talk about, and these are the typical keywords, and people are preferring the popular keywords to make it more visible. This is kind of a limitation maybe for this study.
Strategic choices.
Of course, yeah. Strategic choices, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let me label this internationalization, but really it's critical pedagogy.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Oh, you are welcome, yeah.
And I think with that, there appear to be no more questions. So I thank you very much
You
for
are
your
welcome.
and your paper, which I very much enjoyed reading, both. And why don't you stay in touch with us at the center and
Yeah, of
keep us
course.
about what you're publishing?
Yeah, for the next publication, I'm expecting to see because it takes, it's a special issue actually. It's, I mean, our it was coming from China, Turkey, Russia. It's mainly the countries other than Western countries. What kind of internationalization, in a critical sense, it's also one contribution from Israel, and another country, East Asia, but I couldn't remember. We come together, discuss, we organized a workshop. It was a product of special issue, and this year I'm hoping to see because it took a lot of our time to make the publication.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. And could you also give my greetings to Kristen Schneiderberg?
Okay, of course.
Okay, vielen
Of
Dank.
course. Okay. Okay, vielen Dank. Tschüss.
Tschüss.
Okay,
Thanks
bye.
again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
was
Back
nice to
to
see you. Bye-bye.
I'm closing.
Yeah.